This is Torres, a generational young talent fresh out of Valencia's academy, and he's burst onto the scene. At 16 years old, he is already one of the best players at Valencia, and that's where I come in. Because thanks to Surprise Shirts, I'm the new manager of Valencia, and I'm going to build a team all around Torres to hopefully take Valencia back to the top, which hopefully will end with Valencia and Torres himself lifting the Champions League trophy. But before we get ahead of ourselves, the first steps need to be made, because this squad is far from great and they suffer from some major defensive frailties. Which is why the first signing I am making is bringing in a defender with legendary experience in La Liga. Welcome to Valencia, Sergio Ramos. Of course, at 39 years old, he won't quite be as world class as he was 10 to 15 years ago, but he can still teach this side a few things. And he slides in perfectly next to Diakabe in our 4-2-3-1, with Torres, of course, as our number 10. However, despite just that one signing, with Torres joining the first team, this Valencia side all up their game in this first season, beating the likes of Real Madrid and drawing 0-0 to Barcelona without Torres really impacting the matches at all. And by the beginning of the new year, we found ourselves in second place, ahead of Real Madrid by 9 points with a game in hand. This is incredibly promising too, considering Torres already scored 8 goals, but 4 of them was in the same game. Instead, this successful first half of the season is down to the squad players around him, such as Diego Lopez, who scored 12 goals in 15 games so far from the wing, as well as Papelli, who has been playing centre midfield and has been having the best season of his career so far, alongside another standout talent in Javi Guerrera. And while league leaders Barcelona did defeat us in the return fixture and we failed to keep up with them, we still managed to finish in second place in our first season as Valencia manager. The comparisons to the battle of Messi versus Ronaldo were already being made between Torres and Lamine Yamal by the media. And as Torres finished the season in ridiculous form with 21 goals and 11 assists, he was only behind Hugo Duro, who had 25 goals. As he was approaching his 17th birthday, there were lots to be pleased about him with his progress. My concerns were that there was a really small budget that the board have been given us to build a team around him, especially considering we might not get another year out of Sergio Ramos if he randomly decides to retire. With very little money to spend, we had to rely on free transfers, so we agreed to bring in Frank Kessie in at the end of his current contract, as well as Roberto Alvarado too, whose contract in Mexico also runs out at the end of June. But with Sergio Ramos staying on for one more season, I was able to bring in one last player to improve us between the sticks. So with a better keeper and a couple of additions to midfield and on the wings, we start the season still with a slightly better team than we had, finishing in second place last year. And we began the season really well, with the only points dropped in the first 3 games in a 4-4 draw to Bilbao in what could have already been the game of the season. Hugo Duro started the season in hot form too, scoring 5 goals in 3 games. But with the Champions League fixtures coming up, I arranged for a big team bonding session. So I arranged for a big night out where every single player received a surprise shirts box, and they had to wear whatever shirt was inside this box on that night out. And other than Torres having to wear an Arsenal shirt, we had a great night. So let me tell you how easy it is to now get your own surprise shirt box using the link at the top of the description or the pinned comment. It takes you straight to my own landing page and reminds you of my discount code. From there you can select your size and how obscure you want your shirt to be, as well as telling surprise shirts of any leagues or specific clubs that you do not want to receive a shirt for, with the hardest decision coming next, as you decide whether you want just one-time purchase or a monthly subscription. Because if you decide to get a monthly subscription box with surprise shirts, the benefits that you can get is absolutely ridiculous. You get £4 off per shirt every single month, so you're already making a save, as well as the saving that you get on the first purchase with my code, but then you also get a free box in your 12th month. But if you cannot afford it 1 month, you can just cancel it. There's no contract or obligation to stick it out for the 12 months. If you don't fancy it, you can cancel it at any time. However, there are automatic entries into the new monthly prize draw. Now, some of the prizes of this are ridiculous. There's match tickets. There was even a guy last year who won a chance to go to Gibraltar with surprise shirts and Tom FM. Now, there is a very slim chance that one day you could be that winner and you might end up watching a match with me and Omega Dad. How great would that be? But remember to use the code 10Luke if you're going for that one-time purchase, or 20Luke if you're going for the subscribe and save. You get 20% off your first purchase, and that is using the link at the top of the description or in the pinned comment. Thank you very much again to Surprise Shirts for the ongoing support, and of course a big friend of the channel. They're here every single month, and I'm glad that you guys love them as much as I do. Back to Season 2, and our first campaign in the Champions League back for Valencia went far better than I ever imagined it would. Starting off with a 2-1 victory against Manchester City, and only 2 losses in the entire league phase for us, with one against PSG but the other frustratingly against Karabakh in Azerbaijan. Which was really unfortunate because we finished 9th place, only missing out on the round of 16 automatically thanks to goal difference behind Real Madrid. The squad itself was putting up fantastic numbers though, as the January window closed with no money to improve the squad. Hugo Duro continued to lead the way with 16 goals so far, and Torres had 12 goals and 11 assists, but it was Diego Lopez who have been really impressing, with 12 goals and 13 assists in less games than Torres. Together, they have helped us to a 2nd place in the table by the end of January, again only by goal difference from Real Madrid. From here, our confidence was high, and that carried over into Europe as we knocked out Lyon in the knockout playoffs and Barcelona in the round of 16 of the Champions League 5-4 on aggregate, which was quite a shock because they had just knocked us out of the Copa del Rey by 4-0 2 games earlier. But back in Europe, this put us in good contention because our quarter-final tie was against PSV Eindhoven. And again, it was the players around Torres who got the job done, scoring 4 goals across 2 legs, with Diego Lopez and Frank Kessie scoring 2 in the second leg to secure the 4-1 aggregate win. Unfortunately, the semi-final of the Champions League was against PSG, and the first leg being played in Paris was decided from a cracking strike from a corner. And while this kept our hopes up of reaching the final with the home leg to play, that mindset soon disappeared, as PSG were on top form and Ousmane Dembele in particular punished us as he scored a hat-trick in a 4-1 second leg win. At that point, we were still within striking range of Real Madrid at the top of La Liga. That was until the final 3 games of the season, where we lost 1-0 to Barcelona, drew 1-1 with Atletico Madrid, and lost 3-2 on the final day of the season to Sevilla. We still held on to our 2nd place finish 2 seasons in a row though, which is rather pleasing to see. Hugo Duro also ended the campaign with 30 goals in all competitions, and Torres beat Diego Lopez in both goals and assists by 1 each, picking up 17 in both metrics. But at just 17 years old, he's slowly becoming a household name across Europe. But my job as Valencia manager isn't getting any easier when they're only giving me £14 million to buy players to support him. I had my eye on a few talents, but my first signing was Jan Vigili, another young winger who is objectively better than the ones that we currently have. But I also couldn't help myself bringing in Mateus Gonçalves on a free transfer. With Sergio Ramos retiring, however, maybe I should have looked at bringing in a new centre-back. For now though, I'm still happy with the balance of the new squad, and other than a really harsh start of the season, playing Real Madrid and Barcelona in our first 4 games, both of which that we lost, I am still highly optimistic at keeping our spot in the top 3. That being said, something fell off this season, and the results weren't going as well as the previous 2. We were sitting in 4th place in the league, and Hugo Duro hadn't even got to double figures by February. And our Champions League campaign was rather average too, with 3 losses to Marseille, Red Bull Salzburg and Manchester City in the league phase. And after defeating Leverkusen in the knockout playoffs, Inter Milan sent us home in the round of 16, beating us 2-1. Torres finished our season's top scorer with 17 goals, but also had 20 assists somehow, with 2nd place in goals behind him being Javi Guerra in centre midfield, as Hugo Duro's numbers halved this year, finishing on just 13. And we fell to a 5th place finish in the league table, with Real Betis and Rayo Vallecano finishing above us. There were some unhappy faces in the camp, but not Torres, who was determined to make amends next season in a Valencia shirt. But again, I had to be quite astute in the transfer market because I was only given £25 million to spend this summer. This summer turned out to be our busiest one yet, with 4 free transfers and 3 transfers that with 4 free transfers and 3 transfers that go straight into our first team, and with a new Danish striker joining the club. as well as a 24-year-old centre-back who is so incredibly well-rounded that I spent £27 million on him from Metz in France. Many of the new signings have actually made it into our first 11 and in our new system with a 3 at the back diamond midfield. Scrapping the 4-2-3-1 came at a cost to begin with, as yet again we played Real Madrid and Barcelona, this time in our opening 2 fixtures, and only managed to salvage a point against Barcelona. But after the loss in the third match, to Sevilla this time, things began to finally turn around as we put together a fantastic run of wins. And that run did continue for another 4 games until a loss away from home against Atletico Madrid. However, we did see more and more points being dropped during the colder months, although the chemistry between Torres and Ambeik, the new striker, was really pleasing to see. Unfortunately though, we were still miles off the standards that we set throughout the season 1 and 2. Again, we finished between 12th and 24th in the UEFA Champions League after wins against Liverpool but a loss to Brentford. And in the league, it was Real Betis who have took our spot of the surprise title challengers as we sit in 5th place. We then failed to get past Bodo Glimt in the knockout playoffs of the Champions League after they defeated us in a penalty shootout with the scores at 4-4 on aggregate. And Malaga then scored the only goal in our 4th round tie against them in the Copa del Rey, meaning we only had the La Liga to focus on for the second half of the season. And that's where things finally started to take place for us again. Torres became a monster, and at just 19 he's now stepped up as the leader, putting Valencia on his back, scoring 31 goals and getting 21 assists this season. While Jean Virgili chipped in with 24 assists, Justin Kluivert with 17 assists, and Ambeik scoring 19 times this season. That all contributed to a spot back in the top 3 and hopefully a sign of things to come for season number 5. If we want to spend big money though, we might have to start selling some players because we've only got £25 million in the transfer budget this summer. This was the busiest window we have had so far as players leave, such as Hugo Duro, with 3 players coming in, including another new striker in Max Morstead. For £13 million and at just 23 years old, he looks a fantastic option for us to use as a target forward type of player, being also that he's 6'5". The other 2 players we picked up were young defenders, both of which probably won't make the first team this season. Once again, however, we lose the opening day of the season, this time to Deportivo La Coruña, who also had a player sent off after just 5 minutes in the match. In fact, we only managed to win 1 game out of our first 5, but after that, we finally started to click as a team. Max Morstead was a joy to see up front, linking really well with Torres and scoring 18 goals by the end of January. Torres himself scored 15 and bagged 11 assists too. We still have some way to go before we are challenging for that La Liga title, however. And a game week 8 defeat in the UEFA Champions League phase to Liverpool seen us drop out of the top 8, where we again faced the knockout playoffs. This time we had a comfortable victory across 2 legs against Benfica to progress. And we were even lucky against Inter Milan in the round of 16 thanks to a 2-0 home first leg win and a 1-1 draw in Italy. But then, unfortunately for us, we came into our worst period of the season. April, as we only won 1 of our 7 games, losing 5 of them, including both legs in the UEFA Champions League quarter-finals against Arsenal. Thankfully, we won our remaining 5 league fixtures, and thanks to the 27 goals from Max Morstead and the 17 goals and 23 assists from Torres, we finished in a respectable 4th place spot this year. Our finances are healthy upon first look, but we have £400 million in debt hanging over the club, and it's only getting worse. Which is probably why they have only given us £27 million again to spend in the transfer budget. And that means we have to be a lot more smarter with our money. Once again, I used the free transfer market rather well, but I also went all in on Jarell Hato from Chelsea for £30 million, mainly due to the fact that we needed a left back with my future plans, and he covers many positions and is still only 24 years old. Torres is now a world-class player, but I need to find a system that he can thrive in that the team also benefits from the most. And I eventually settled for a 4-1-4-1, which drops into a 4-3-3 out of possession. Although early signs were not promising, as the first 3 matches all finished 3-1, and we lost 2 of them to Villarreal and Real Madrid. Things did pick up, and by December, Torres became an unstoppable force, scoring 17 goals and getting 10 assists in just 24 games. That was until he tore his meniscus in a 3-3 draw to Sevilla. From then on, we were without our talisman, and although Max Morstead stepped up with 18 goals so far himself, we were struggling without Torres. Other than in the UEFA Champions League, where we won 6 games and only lost 2 in the league phase. The damage has already been done in the league, however, as he would be out until the beginning of March at the earliest. So we just had to hope that we would be able to get him back for the round of 16 thanks to skipping the knockout playoff round. And he was back for the first leg, where he starred and scored in a 3-0 win against Monaco, where he was so happy to return. Getting a goal in the second leg also, and a 2-1 win to help us into another quarter-final of the Champions League. The quarter-final itself was a tough tie against Manchester City, but we took the lead thanks to a deflected goal off of Rodri, who made amends, scoring the equaliser in the first leg to finish 1-1. Torres had a chance to win the match to make it 2-1 but missed from the spot. And this unfortunately cost us dearly, as the second leg played in Valencia was level, and despite us being the better of the two sides, we failed to score again, allowing Manchester City the opportunity to take the lead and then go on to score a second on the night to secure their success and to send us out of the competition again. And this season also came with more domestic disappointment. We were out of the Copa del Rey at the quarter-final stage thanks to Barcelona, and our league form at the start of the year didn't help, even though we had a really good back end of the year. And it was another season in third place and nowhere near the front two. Our budget of £32 million initially added another £21 million thanks to the sale of Leo Roman for £20 million. We spent £27 million though, including a couple of fantastic young talents and a returning face in a free transfer. Kang-in Lee, who left the club 9 seasons ago, has finally returned after a long spell at PSG sat in their reserves. I decided this season to start with the same system as last year and only change it if we got off to a bad start. But within the first 3 games, I was enjoying the football I was seeing with 2 wins and 1 draw away to Atletico Madrid. So we kept with it, and I'm really glad we did. By the end of January, Max Morstead already had 28 goals in 32 games, closely followed by Torres with 25, and we had 5 players in double figures for assists. And other than the 2 losses to Real Madrid and Barcelona, we had won every single other league fixture so far. And here we currently are, sat in the top spot, but how long will it last? We were not quite as good in the Champions League with losses to Frankfurt, Sparta Prague and Liverpool, and Torres did let the team down, getting himself sent off with a straight red card against Sevilla in the quarter-finals of the Copa del Rey, which then ended in a 4-0 loss. 3 more losses in the league, and a big result came against Barcelona as we defeated them 2-1 at home, which kept us in the lead for the title race, just about popping us back into top spot with just 7 games to go. In Europe, we got ourselves past Rangers with ease in the knockout playoffs, but then faced AC Milan in the round of 16, where we pulled off a great 2-0 first leg win, only to get battered 3-0 and eliminated in the second leg. The most important game of the season next though, as we hosted Real Madrid at home in the league, and within just 18 minutes, Kylian Mbappe was putting the Spanish Giants in the lead, which would then overtake us in the table. However, we weren't going down without a fight, and in the second half, our man Torres came up with a very important equaliser. Both teams struggled to make many clear-cut chances at 1-1, but there was one more goal, and Javi Guerra was the man to give us the 3 points with a cracking near-post header. Unfortunately, we did drop 2 more points against Malaga 2 games later, but we still hold a 3-point lead going into May. The last 4 games, however, were against clubs I fancied us to beat, and when both Morstead and Torres scored in the first 3-0 win away to Bilbao, I was rather confident, followed by a 6-1 home win to Eibar and a 5-1 away win to Villarreal, and it was all but ours, topped off with a final day win against Girona, 3-0 with Torres scoring the last goal of the season, and we celebrated in front of our own fans as champions. Real Madrid even dropped 2 more points, giving us a 5-point gap at the top. But the numbers from our front 5 attacking threats were a joy to behold. None more so than Torres with 37 goals and 22 assists, with the 22-year-old putting his name in the hat as the best player in the world. This summer, the Valencia board gave me £42 million with a rather big wage, and I made the most out of it to support Torres. To begin with, I found 3 fantastic players and some bargains too, starting with a Zambian keeper who was playing in the second tier of Spain for £8 million, and he looks fantastic. Ezequiel Ferreira then joined from Boca Juniors and is the physical midfielder that I've been searching for that's also really good on the ball. And Sergio, another Spanish player with one name, potentially a world-class player too, joins us from Elche after scoring 17 goals in the second tier. Which made me think, when was the last time the league champions signed 2 players from the league below to become first-team regulars? However, the most impactful signing might be Rodrigo Marul, who we signed from Flamengo for £15 million in the middle of August, and he will sit next to Torres. With subtle changes to the tactic, I felt that we had a side capable of going back-to-back, and that opinion looked rather correct after the first 9 games of the season, where we won all 9, including a 2-0 win at home to Real Madrid. And that form continued throughout the next few months, especially in the Champions League, finishing 3rd in the league phase of the Champions League with wins over Juventus and AC Milan. Unfortunately, in the league, we started picking up a lot of draws, including 4 between January and February, with one being a 3-3 draw and a late equaliser against Real Madrid, which did feel more like a win than anything else. Even still, those 4 draws were the only 4 draws we've had so far this season, and has cost us the top spot of Barcelona finally overtake us. But back in the Champions League, we then faced fellow Spanish club Atletico Madrid in the round of 16, who defeated us 4-2 in the first leg. Somehow in the second leg, however, we won 3-1, taking the game to extra time, where we scored 4 more goals to win 7-1 on the night. Exciting as that was, the league title might even be more entertaining, because with 4 games remaining, we regained the top spot after Barcelona drew with Osasuna 3-3. And the good news kept on rolling, as Chelsea in the Champions League quarter-final could not believe what happened to them as we smashed them 4-0 in the first leg. It was all over for them when we scored the first goal in the second leg too, putting us into the semi-final against Liverpool. The first leg being at home, I thought would have given us the advantage, but Liverpool dealt the first blow, and all we could do was pull back an equaliser from Max Morstead. In between, we kept our league title hopes high with a 1-0 win over Eibar thanks to Marul's effort. Following that was the second leg against Liverpool, who scored first at Anfield after just 4 minutes. However, this one wasn't over yet. Wallace Yan pulled one back in the first half, keeping it 2 apiece, and in the second half we limited Liverpool's chances and countered at any opportunity, putting ourselves in the lead thanks to the Torres-Marul combination. Gave ourselves a 2-goal advantage soon after when Torres released Sergio, who again found Marul and capped it off with a 4th and final goal on the night when Captain Torres peeled off to the right hand side and a nice little 1-2 slotted it home to put us into the final. The important games didn't stop there though, as we then had to defeat Atletico Madrid, which we did 3-1, as Barcelona refused to drop any more points, as they smashed 7 past Atletico Bilbao. What was keeping us ahead of Barcelona was the results against each other, which was rather beneficial for us because they had a way better goal difference. We got past Cadiz when Torres Panenka'd from the spot in a 4-1 away win. But the final game of the season against Girona was crazy, because we found ourselves 2 goals up in the 72nd minute, thinking that we were going to lift the league title. That's when Girona pulled 1 goal back from Solis, and in the 91st minute, drama, as Girona's attack put the title in the hands of Barcelona as Martinez scored an equaliser. That was until we then kicked off. We carried the ball down the left through Diego Lopez, who found Marul's head, and thankfully, after he came back off the crossbar, he found the net again. We even had time in the 94th minute to find a 4th goal through Diego Lopez. And so, on results alone against each other, we managed to pull off back-to-back La Liga titles. What's more impressive is Torres also picked up the Golden Boot with 27 goals, 11 more than Lamine Yamal. With 36 goals and 23 assists this season, our man Torres is tipped to win the Ballon d'Or this year if we can also lift the Champions League trophy. But of course, it's Real Madrid who are our opponents, and although we've got one of the best teams in the league, it's still Real Madrid in the Champions League, and with a front 3 of Mbappe, Vinicius Jr. and Endrick, anything can happen. And unfortunately for us, it only took 9 minutes before Jude Bellingham slotted in the first goal. 5 minutes later, and Sergio is hacked down, giving us a free kick, a chance for Torres, who is a master at them, and the keeper is forced to pull off a great save. Torres on the corner picks out Sergio, who's still on the edge of the box, and a 1-2 with Wallace-Jan, and he smashes in the equaliser, and it's game on. An overload down the right-hand side through a Real Madrid attack, and Vinicius Jr. is forcing another good save from our keeper. 10 minutes before half-time, and Torres picks up the ball deep and fires in a pass to Sergio, who does really well to control it, playing it back to Ferreira, and it's out to Niskas. Sergio continues his run through a lovely, beautiful ball over the top, then he's found, and he nails in an amazing half volley. The Real Madrid defence are sure that it's offside, however, and VAR confirm that the goal is awarded. And upon the replay, you can see he was miles onside and timed his run perfectly, and it's 2-1 Valencia. However, our defence is letting our attack down because they stood around like statues, allowing Real Madrid to bounce the ball around and Jude Bellingham to find his second in the night. Half-time, and I told the lads that if we got another goal, I fancy our chances of winning the match, and they listened keenly and agreed. My hope was that this gave the defence confidence to hold a second half clean sheet. However, from kickoff, it was more attacks from Real Madrid as a long-range effort just goes over the bar. Wave after wave of attacks came from Real Madrid, and more defensive blocks was made to thankfully keep the score level at 2-2. And then up steps Torres, the best player in the world, and he fires in an incredible free kick right into the top corner, relieving all of the pressure of our Valencia side had from Real Madrid to put us back into the lead at 3-2. Another wave of attack came though, this time from Endrick, and now we survive thanks to another fantastic stop. Changes had to be made as we brought on Andre and Diego Lopez, switching to a 4-2-3-1 to help the midfield. And as much as I don't like to make changes to the system usually, this time it paid off, as we kept the ball well with Hato helping out in there as well, and eventually Diego Lopez was fouled and the referee is sure that it's inside the box, which VAR confirmed he was correct. And of course, up steps our captain, our leader, Torres, who smashes in the fourth goal, and this one could be all over. And surely it was when Hato then curled in an incredible fifth goal, which again everyone thought could be offside. But another VAR check confirmed that he just about stayed onside thanks to the defender leaning just enough to keep him on. The fun wasn't over yet though, as Real Madrid even found themselves a third goal. And Jarell Hato found a sixth from a scrappy free kick which bounced around everywhere beforehand, dropping to his left foot. But the clock finally ran out, and the Valencia fans were jubilant. After some tough years competitively and financially, a young player by the name of Torres comes through, a generational talent, a player that you can build your whole team around and at times put Valencia on his back to make them European champions. Even still, he was completely robbed of the Ballon d'Or by Kylian Mbappe. Either way, he's the best player in the world in my eyes, and he deserves it. Just like you deserve to continue watching some fantastic Football Manager stories. So on screen right now is a 10-year trophy race between my dad and myself at Birmingham and Wrexham with Tycoon Takeovers.